Bring your broken hallelujah here. Bring the large one that is beyond repair. Bring the small one that's too soft to share. Bring your broken hallelujah here. I know that people have told you that before you can give, you have to get yourself together. They overstated her value of perfection by a lot, or they forgot. You are a gift. We all bring some broken things, songs and dreams and long lost hopes. But here together, we reach within. As a community, we begin again. And from the pieces, we will build something new. There is work that only you can do. We wait for you. Come, let us worship together. The words of the Reverend Teresa Inez Soto.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. My name is Diana Claghorn. I use the pronouns she and hers, and I will be your worship associate today. We're glad to welcome Barbara Meyer as our guest minister for this morning. If this is your first time here, we're glad you've come. This is a welcoming congregation, and we are always working on how to better welcome and care for one another. Whoever you are, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are. As we begin, we want to acknowledge that this church occupies land in Huichin, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land. We acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is deeply felt and commit our congregation to be in right relationships with Indigenous communities, align in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. Please take a moment now to prepare yourself and your space for our time together. You might get a candle and a way to light it, so you can join us in the chalice lighting from home. Now, let us kindle our hearts with the words from Leonard Cohen. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. I invite you now to share in the comments where you are by writing, "I carry the flame in," whatever town or city you are joining us from. And now, please join us in singing our opening song, "Morning Has Come." The words will be on screen.
Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
Please join me in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
who follows a dream. Follow the fellow, follow the fellow, follow the fellow who follows a dream.
This is a story that I call The Invisible Boy. So once upon a time, there was a little boy who had become very sad and withdrawn. And he sat in his room and just couldn't think of anything that he wanted to do or anyone that he wanted to be with. And he picked up a mirror and held it and looked at it, and he couldn't see himself. He wasn't there. What was going on? He was so discouraged. Then a friend of his, a little girl, came by, and she just sat down next to him. She held his hand. She didn't say much of anything other than, "Hi, I'm here to be your friend." And she just sat there with him and was present and let him know that he was important. By her presence, he let him know that he was important to her. And after a little while, she left, and another friend came, another boy this time. And he said, "Boy, I want to thank you for all the help that you gave me when I was trying to do my math homework, and I simply couldn't get it. And you helped me, and I am so grateful that you helped me with my math homework because I just didn't think I could get it done. Thank you so much." And then when he left, his dog came in the room, and his dog came over and sat in his lap. And as the dog manner was, he was begging to be petted. So the little boy petted the dog and sat there with the dog in his lap. And the dog looked up to him with grateful eyes, just being glad of being there and being held by the boy and being petted by the boy. And another friend came in and talked to him and said, "You know, I was really worried the other day that I couldn't get the task done that I needed to get done for school. And you told me, you can do it, just buckle down and you can do it. And let me know if you need some help." And I realized that, in fact, I could do it. And you had given me the moral support to help me accomplish what I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to do. So the little boy, a little bit later in the day, picked up the mirror again and looked at himself, and he could see himself. He was there. What was going on? My opinion is that the friends that he had, the little girl, the little boys, the two boys and the dog, all helped him to realize that he was somebody special and precious inside, and that in fact he could see that he was special and precious, and that's what enabled him to see himself. So my question to you is, has there ever been a time when you couldn't see how special and precious that you were inside? And when that happened, what was it that brought you out of that? What kind of friend or experience or animal or whatever, what is it that brought you out of that feeling? And my guess is that it was someone or something that helped you realize that what you have done in your life is precious and good, and that you are greatly appreciated as part of the human community, just the way you are, without having to do anything incredibly heroic or anything, just being who you are. When you realize that is one of the most important things to do, is to realize that you are precious just the way you are. So thank you.
I've got a secret for the mad. In a little bit of time it won't hurt so bad. And I get that I don't get it, but you'll burn your way through and then you won't regret it. You're not gonna believe a word I say. What's the point in just drowning another day? And I get that I don't get it, but the world will show you that you won't regret it. Little things are the stereotypes, they're gonna help you get through this one night. And there will be a day when you can say you're okay and mean it. I promise you it'll all make sense again. I promise you it'll all make sense again. There's nothing to do right now but try. There are 100 people who will listen to you cry. And I get that they don't get it, but they love you so much that you won't regret it. You're at the bottom, this is it. Just wait through, you will feel fixed. And you think that I don't get it, but I burn my way through and I don't regret it. Little things are the stereotypes, they're gonna help you get through this one night. And there will be a day when you can say you're okay and mean it. I promise you it'll all make sense again. I promise you it'll all make sense again. I promise you it'll all make sense again. I promise you it'll all make sense again.
We now enter the time in our service that we make for our hearts and our spirits, for our cares and concern for one another. We lift up and hold the joys and sorrows and cares and concerns and challenges that we each may be facing. During our time of silence this morning, I invite you to share any joys or sorrows or significant milestones of your own in the comments. I invite us all to hold these cares in the compassionate embrace of this loving community. Please join me in an attitude of prayer and meditation. May we discover through pain and torment the strength to live with grace and humor. May we discover through doubt and anguish the strength to live with dignity and holiness. May we discover through suffering and fear the strength to move toward healing. May it come to pass that we be restored to health and to vigor. May life grant us wellness of body, spirit, and mind. And if this cannot be so, may we find in this transformation and passage moments of meaning, opportunities for love, and the deep and gracious calm that comes when we allow ourselves to move on. The words of the Rabbi Rami M. Shapiro. Amen. Now let us join in singing Every Night and Every Morn.
Every night and every morn, some to misery are born. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight. Joy and woe are woven fine, longing for the soul divine. Under every grief and pine runs the joy with silk and twine. It is right, it should be so. We were made for joy and woe. And with this we rightly know, safely through the world we go.
This is a reading from my book, Held. It is a story originally told to me by the Reverend Mark Morrison Reed. Nate was maybe in his 30s. He would sit in the front row, rubbing his legs and rocking back and forth during the worship service. He was a bit awkward, his voice loud, and from time to time he would disappear. One weekday, Donna, who is Mark's wife and co-minister, and I were at a bridge party with the senior members of the congregation. They were mostly in their 80s. We gathered in a nice suburban apartment. There were plenty of appetizers, some serious card playing, and some light conversation until the host said, "I don't know how you put up with that young man fidgeting around throughout the service. It's just terrible." What happened next left me stunned. One octogenarian said, "You do know it's his medication that makes him do that." A retired public health nurse told us she had spoken to him and knew what had been bothering him. A former university president said, "I was once institutionalized." And someone else said, "My son has bouts like that." Neither Donna nor I said a word. My amazement turned to pride, and I knew why Nate kept coming to church. It was not about sermons, whether scholarly or entertaining. It was not about universalism or our professed belief in a loving God. It was our lived theology, God made manifest in the love that surrounded that young man. Thus ends the reading. Hello, I'm so happy to be here with you in Berkeley today, even if it's virtually, to talk to you about the messages that appear in my recently published book called Held, Showing Up for Each Other's Mental Health. Okay, I'm telling you a story about a double standard that exists, I think. There's a woman that told me this story, that she and her husband had a daughter who was seriously mentally ill and who was hospitalized in a local psychiatric ward. And she and her husband were coming home from work every day, very stressed and grabbing something to eat and running off to see their daughter. And they wanted to support her. And one evening when this happened, they got a phone call from someone in the church and said, so-and-so in the church had just had a family that's in the hospital, and we're trying to put together casseroles for this person. And we want to know if you can bring a casserole over to these people's house. And so they put together something, and they went over to the people's house and gave them the casserole, and they went off to visit their daughter. And when they were driving home, the woman said she thought to herself, wait a minute, we have somebody that's in the hospital in our family, and no one's bringing us casseroles. And is there a double standard here? And the answer is yes, there's a double standard. In the case with people who have family members that are in psychiatric ward, or maybe even in rehab for drug abuse, they often don't tell anybody about it, or people think that they shouldn't be telling anybody about it. And so it's all quiet and hushed up and nobody helps out the family. So one of my messages today is this double standard needs to stop. So tell a little bit about mental health. 1 in 5 American adults every year gets diagnosed with a mental health condition. And nearly half of those people coexist with an addiction at the same time. And this is worse since the pandemic. So any Sunday, you can be pretty sure that the pews are filled, or the Zoom screens or the YouTube screens, wherever you're watching, are filled with people living with mental health problems and their loved ones. And many of them are suffering silently, and they are coming to church to get hope to make it through the week. And give some definitions from the American Psychiatric Association. Mental health is defined as a successful performance of mental function resulting in productive activities, fulfilling relationships with other people, and the ability to adapt to change and cope with adversity. So productive activities, relationships, and being able to cope with adversity. Mental disorder, on the other hand, is a behavioral syndrome that creates impairment or distress in thinking, in mood, or in behavior. So thinking, mood, or behavior that has been diagnosed by a mental health professional. And there is a continuum, if you'd like to see. Everybody isn't all healthy or all sick at any one time. There's a continuum that we live our lives on as we move through our lives, that sometimes we're sort of in this stressed out mood, and sometimes we're very healthy, but it isn't like it's either all or nothing. So the definition of terms, mental health recovery is a process of change in which people improve their mental health and wellness. They live a self-directed life, and they strive to live to their full potential. And this is a working definition from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Agency of the US government. It does not necessarily mean the absence of symptoms or the absence of a need for medications. So people can be spoken of as being in recovery or on the road to recovery. And my experience is not is one of those that illustrates that. So when my daughter was born in 1978, and that's a picture of me with my daughter, and she was 10 days old at that time, I think. I was shortly after that picture, I was suffered from a severe postpartum depression, and I was hospitalized in the local psychiatric ward. I was suicidal. I didn't want to live. I didn't think I thought I was a burden to my family. And my doctor said that he could help me, but I didn't really believe it. And even though I fairly quickly went back to normal mental function and I was able to go back to my job and so forth, I felt like a damaged human being. And I was very unhappy with myself that I had been through that experience. And I lived with that unhappiness and just hating who I was for a number of years. And I finally, I think it was 8 years later, I finally said to myself, I do not want to live my life like this anymore. And I went back to my psychiatrist, the guy who had helped me in the psychiatric ward, and said that I wanted to really explore what was going on and what was the problem, and figure out if there was anything that I could do to get over this. And so I did. I went back on a regular basis to see him, and I would do whatever he said. And one of my visits, he asked me, "What are you doing for yourself spiritually?" And I thought, nothing. I'm not going to church, not doing anything like that. But he said, "Well, would you like to learn how to meditate?" And when he said that, I thought, what? Sitting around and doing nothing? How is that going to help anything? And but I didn't say that. I thought I promised myself that I was going to, do whatever he had suggested because I really wanted to make a change. And so he gave me a little book on meditation, and I took it home and I read it, and I would sit quietly for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or maybe 15 minutes every day. And I think it was 2 or 3 weeks later, I went back to see him. And I told him, I don't know where it came from, but I'm happy. I'll never forget what he did. He pointed at me and he said, "It came from you." And I thought, you mean there's something, he's right. There's something precious and unique, and happiness comes from within. It isn't something that I get because of all these things that I accomplish in my life. It's something that's within. And that experience and that realization was like a rebirth. I view it as a rebirth of myself. And I, decided that this was a spiritual experience of some sort, and that I was going to get back into church. And I went to a Unitarian Universalist church because I thought Universalist was this new way. That word sounded like it was I believed in. And the minister, I didn't tell anyone but the minister that I had been in a psychiatric ward. And the people in that congregation really, what I would say, held me in love. And it was one of the things that was part of my recovery and from my rebuilding my life in this new way of looking at myself. And eventually I started a depression support group at church and took a class at Star King School for the Ministry in pastoral counseling, because that's how I thought that I would be most helpful to people if I knew about that. And then when I was halfway through that class, I thought, this is what I need to be doing with my life. And eventually changed my career. I retired from my software engineer job at IBM and went to seminary and started a ministry focusing on mental health issues. So you talk about mental health. You talk about what is it that makes people recover, and it's really a holistic picture that you have to look at. It isn't just take these pills and everything's going to be fine. It's what are you doing for yourself spiritually? What are you doing for yourself learning things intellectually? What are you doing for yourself physically to make sure that you're healthy and get exercise and get enough to eat, get enough sleep? What are you doing for yourself environmentally in terms of being out in the sunshine and doing things in the environment? And a place that you're living is a helpful place to live? Do you have enough financial resources to be able to do the things that you need in your life? Occupationally, are you doing something with your life that you believe is important? And whether you're volunteer or paid, it's something that you occupationally think is important and that you value what you're doing. Socially, what kind of relationships do you have? And emotionally, do you know who you are emotionally and what your ups and downs are and what kinds of things help you and make you feel better? All of those things need to be looked at when someone recovers. And my message to you is that people in congregations can help in those areas that aren't covered by professional mental health services. Certainly spiritually, many churches have ways of learning new things or classes and so forth. Can encourage people to take care of themselves and get enough sleep and get enough to eat. We can and help them find what it is occupationally that's meaningful to them and help them do. And certainly the social environment that we find in church is really important. So a lot of those things that are around recovery, just the ordinary person in the congregation can help with. A mental health crisis is a spiritual problem as well as a psychiatric one. It was certainly true in my case. A person may experience existential doubts about their self, about who they are as a person, about what is true, what is meaningful, what does love mean in this environment, and what their agency, what are they able to do? And their experience may undermine a faith in the divine and a belief in justice. So all of those things are really an important part of what happens spiritually to a person when they have a mental health crisis. And doing spiritual practice can be helpful to many people with mental health problems. In fact, in several studies, it's been shown it's the #1 coping skill that people have in order to get over their problems that they're having or to deal with the problems. The kinds of things that people mention often are either meditation, prayers, or, they say prayer, please help me. Music, listening to music, that's really big. Spiritual direction helps a lot of people. Some of the arts like Tai Chi, Qigong, or yoga, those kinds of things are sometimes very helpful to people. Chanting, this is just a partial list, but these kinds of things are really very helpful as far as getting a person into it, to be with themselves spiritually. There's a psychiatrist from Long Beach named Dr. Mark Riggins who he's helped many people that were most seriously mentally ill, and he wrote a book about what are the steps that people go through when they are recovering from a mental health problem. And he said the first step that person takes to get them on the road to recovery is hope. And it isn't necessarily exactly what's going to happen that they hope for, but the fact that something can actually improve, some way that they can see that there is actually a possibility of getting better. And if people don't have this, we may need to hold it for them. So I'll tell you a story about when I was in the psychiatric ward. Like I said, I didn't believe my doctor when he said he could help me. I thought my family would be better off without me. And I think the first or second day that I was there, there was another patient who came in and told me about her, that she had been there for 3 weeks, I think, and that she had come in very, very sick, and that she was now ready to be released, and she felt so much better now. And she just wanted me to know that it is possible to get better and that I could get better too. And when she told me that, I thought, maybe there's hope for me. And that was the start of my recovery, is that patient that she did not have any professional credentials or anything. She was just another person. It's one of the reasons why I believe so strongly in peer support, because sometimes the peers can hear something from, like I did, from someone else, from a patient, that they wouldn't believe if someone else told it. Another really important part of recovery, or helping people to recover, is presence. And presence involves active listening to another person, is being there with them and actively listening without judgment. So you're not telling them they're wrong or they're right or whatever, just listening, validating their feelings. I can see that you're very upset. I can see that this is really destroying you, and not giving them any advice, because they're going to probably not pay any attention, or maybe it wouldn't be good for them to be. It has to come from within. So being there with them is what a very precious, sacred gift, presence. So I'll tell you a story about when I started my ministry. This is actually when I was an intern. It's just before I started my official ministry. I was an intern in a fairly large church, and we were getting ready one Sunday morning, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after I had started. And there was a woman that came up to me who I knew was living with some serious anxiety issues. And she came up to me just frantic. Barbara, what can I do? I'm so anxious. I don't know what to do. Please help me. And I thought, what can I do? I thought, okay, why don't you and I go and sit in the library, because I knew the library was empty at that time. And I thought, maybe I'll think of something by the time we get into the library. So we went into the library, closed the door, and I sat there holding her hand. Didn't say any words. And I was thinking, what in the world, what possibly can I do? I don't have any ideas about what I can tell her. And after a couple of minutes, she turned to me and she said, I feel so much better just being here with you. What a lesson for me. It wasn't any great theory or any great things that I had to say, or any great resources that I had to give her, or people that she should talk to, or anything. It was my just simply sitting there, being with her, showing her that I cared. That was the gift that she needed. And I will submit to you, my friends, that this is a gift that we can all give. So another story, actually, I've done this story many times. When I talk in congregations, I ask people to rise at the end of my sermon. I tell my own story because I know, not because it's so special, but because I know it makes it safe for other people to then be able to acknowledge that that's something that they or a loved one of theirs has gone through. And at the end of the sermon, I will ask them to rise in body or in spirit if they or a loved one of theirs has lived with a mental health difficulty, as an act of public witness. And every time I've done this, which has been many times so far, there have been 80 to 100% of the people that are in the room will stand up. And they all look around and say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize there were so many people that this was affected. This is really, you know, and then in coffee hour, they can talk about it because they realize that everybody has gone through this. So, and I've done this, there's virtual versions of this too, which I'm going to try with you a little bit later. So you'll know that that's coming. So what can people do if they have, what helps? And I collected a number of things together. There's a lot more detail of this in my book, but the basic categories of things that people can do are getting some sort of professional help or peer help. You know, even if they can't get professional help or the professional help they get is not being helpful to them, many times peers can be very helpful. Caring for their body, getting enough sleep, getting enough to eat, getting enough exercise so that they can stay healthy physically. Learning how to manage your stress, know what it is that helps you when you're having trouble. Being aware of your emotions, knowing the kind of things that trigger you and the things that show, when things are getting worse, and knowing what it is that you need to do to manage a situation, what works for you in a situation. Enriching your life in some way, especially if it's some creative way where you can see for yourself that you are a creative individual, that is, in terms of crafts or music or learning or some way to enrich your life. And then engaging, like I've said, with spirituality. That's always been a really important part. And what about the family or the loved ones, the people that have mental health difficulties? The kinds of things that I have learned that help are getting some kind of professional or peer help yourself. A peer group that's very helpful to many family members is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They have a program called Family to Family, and that helps, families that have gone through this can help other families that have gone through this, and that's very helpful to many people. Learning how to communicate effectively to your loved one, the kinds of things that you should say, the kinds of things you shouldn't say that aren't helpful. And that will be really helpful to learn, what kinds of things you can do that actually work. And helping your loved one live with their situation, if there's something that they need, like having a hard time finding a place to live, having a hard time finding a doctor, trying to find groups to engage with and so forth, helping them to find that is really important. And then finally, having a life of your own, don't let it take you over. You are special and precious as well. So we talk a little bit about mental health as a social justice issue. There are many factors that make it difficult to get good mental health care. Many times it's insurance or money issues. Coverage sometimes is non-existent or inadequate for many people, and many practitioners don't take it. So even if you can find someone that will take you as a patient, then they won't take insurance. Or the insurance company gives you a list of here's the practitioners in your area that you can engage with, and you can't find any of them that will take new patients because of a lack of availability. And if you want to do some of these alternative therapies that sometimes are helpful to people, they may be too costly or not widely available for many people. So there's a lot of barriers there. There are cultural, linguistic, and geographical issues. So if you're Black or Indigenous or people of color, LGBTQ, teens, or people don't speak English, it's very hard to find people that will be able to work with you effectively. And a really big one is involvement in the criminal justice system. The jails and the prisons, like in Alameda County, our jail here is just, 40% mental health people are in there, so that really isn't the best place to get better, is in a jail. And engagement with police very tragically can lead to death sometimes. I know people that have called police because a member of their family is having a mental health crisis, and the police have come out and killed the person. And that's just tragic for everybody concerned, and so it's really difficult. And working with the public mental health system to try to get police trained or get other people to reach out when there's psychiatric emergencies rather than the police, and that kind of thing can be really, make a difference in a community. And it's really sadly to say that often the most troubled people can get the worst care. All is not lost, however. There are some good low-cost options. There are many good peer and self-help groups that are free. The picture there I have is the network of Alameda County Network of Mental Health Clients. I work for an agency that is part of that network, and we get our funding from the county. So anybody that comes in our door does not have to pay any extra money for it. Some local governments have social services that are on a free or sliding scale. There's online support many times that people can get. I know at least in my area that NAMI has an online support group once a week that people can take, and it's a Zoom group and people can take. And then a lot of the things that I suggested previously on what helps the individual don't have a cost associated with them. If you want to work in social justice, on mental health issues, there's all kinds of areas that you might choose to work in. Economic justice, abuse prevention, learning how to support and treat individuals, learning how to get involved either as, you can get involved in the mental health system by being on your county mental health board. A lot of times they're looking for people for that. And publicity when there's a difficulty, making something widely known, getting involved in direct service or volunteerism, and then organized activism when it comes to that. So the book that I wrote, Held, has a study guide included in it. And the idea is that congregations might have a book read for the study guide, and using the study guide as a way to talk over the chapters that they read. And that way they can, is a way of starting an effort to get aware of what's going on in the mental health system. So I am now going to ask you as an act of public witness. So in the comments or the chat, wherever it is that you can input things, please write yes if you or a loved one has lived with a mental health difficulty, and write no if you have not. And so I'll ask you to do that now as an act of public witness. Thank you. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So may it be. Amen.
As we commit together to making this a loving community, we take time to remember that UUCB needs our gifts and support. We invite you now to make an offering. Each week, half of our offerings are shared with good neighbor organizations who need our financial support. And we hope you can continue to practice generosity with these organizations during this difficult time. This month, our good neighbor is the Diablo Valley College START program, which is a foster youth success initiative that supports programs designed to increase access, retention, and graduation rates for current and former foster youth at DVC. Their goal is to provide a warm and welcome environment, create a support network, and empower foster youth students to make progress towards self-sufficient, professional success, and community leadership. Offerings of any value are received with gratitude. Details on how to give electronically will appear on screen as the offertory begins. Thank you. Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service. It's been so good to be together today, even virtually. Before we shift to our coffee hour on Zoom, may I remind you to check out all of the things that are available in our congregation, even during this pandemic, by exploring our website, uucb.org. There you can find a link in the news to the week ahead, our weekly email newsletter, which includes a list of activities, announcements, and contact information. As we prepare to leave the worship service, here are a few things to note. On Saturday, August 28th, at 9 a.m., there will be a work party. Have fun with some healthy exercise while removing juniper stumps, spreading mulch, and making UUCB ready for the fall. Children are especially invited to prepare for some fairy guests in the former Rose Garden. Bring masks and thermoses. On Sunday, the 5th, we invite you to say goodbye to our dear Reverend Cat in person on September 5th at UUCB from 12:30 to 2 p.m. We will be masked and socially distanced, but there may be some silly dancing. Please check the website for more information. And now, please join in singing our closing song, When I Am Frightened. The words will be on screen.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you believe in me, stand by me willingly? Will you share some of your questions with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me, comfort me tenderly? Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to
The benediction are words from Anne Weems. In the God-forsaken, obscene quicksand of life, there is a deafening Alleluia rising from the souls of those who weep, and of those who weep with those who weep. If you watch, you will see the hand of God putting the stars back in their skies, one by one. Go in peace. Amen.